Hi, I'm Hetty Bryant and I'm your lecturer for MGT552 Leadership and Social Impact. I'm really looking forward to teaching this subject. We've only got a small number, about 15 of you in the subject, and it's a very new subject that I'm just finished writing, and you'll notice some of the actual topic areas haven't been filled out yet, but they'll all be completed by the end of next week. So let's get started. I've just got a brief PowerPoint just to give you an overview of what's going to happen in this subject. I take an approach where I actually really like to facilitate the learning. I like to model the theories that I'm espousing. So those are quite different. But first of all, we'll start off with the learning objectives for the subject. And you would have noticed in the subject outline that there were a number of overarching questions. So the first question was, how does our organisation impact society and how should it impact society? So I want you to hold that question throughout the subject and through your readings and your study and your writing and your assessment. Hold that question. The next one. So considering that, is our growth sustainable and responsive in a changing world? So this is at the crux of this whole subject and the whole leadership approach moving forward. And what are some leadership strategies for creating positive societal impact? So we'll be looking at frameworks and strategies. So the learning objectives, I always like to go back to those, are to be able to identify, critically analyse and discuss leadership that impacts both organisational performance as well as broader social outcomes across private, public and non-profit context. So we'll be looking at a range of things. We'll be looking at community, we'll be looking at different sorts of organisations, and particularly organisations working in the third sector, which are organisations for they're in the social economy. Be able to effectively articulate and discuss complex challenges in achieving social impact. More and more we have complexity, and these challenges are facing us, and we have to respond to them with the best way we can. Be able to research and apply established theories to your developing theoretical framework to the practice of leadership in the face of adaptive challenges. There'll be a number of theoretical frameworks that we'll investigate, and I'll talk about those in a minute. Be able to interpret and transmit different ways of framing leadership in the context of social impact, and I'll just touch on those in this welcome as well. Okay? And be able to put into practice learning about leadership for social impact and to identify opportunities to practice that social impact, that leadership for social impact. And that will be part of your third assessment, which is your action learning project, which we'll explore a bit more as well. And all of this is underpinned by the text that you've been given, which is this one here that I've got right next to me. It's a bit of a Bible for me at the moment, Leading from the Emerging Future by Otto Scharmer and Katrin Kauffer. And Otto Scharmer and Peter Senge and others are quite famous for establishing the Presencing Institute. A lot of the resources you'll look at come from the Presencing Institute. One of the theoretical frameworks, the one that underpins that book, is Theory U, and we'll talk more about that in a tick. So the essential elements are theoretical frameworks and practices, which include, as I said, Theory U, self-leadership, which comes from the Navigator, which is another key resource for you, and I think you'll really enjoy reading through the Navigator. It's got there's a lot of resources and tools attached to the Navigator. The Navigator comes from the Centre for Social Impact, which is an Australian centre auspiced by the University of New South Wales, and they're doing some really innovative stuff. So hopping on and looking at what they're doing on their site is really an important thing to do as well. Then we'll use a model of social change leadership by Sonia Espina and others, and there's a number of readings, and there's some videos with Sonia as well, and her colleagues, and a social change model which is introduced as well in your first topic by Wendy Wagner and is also included in the Navigator. So they all roll up to each other, really. They all align with each other. They all follow very, very similar principles. First of all is the Theory U, as I mentioned, which is about starting from a place of downloading and moving to a place of presencing, which is being in the flow. I'm not going to go into that anymore because you'll be too overwhelmed if I explain that too much now. And for those of you who have been deeply immersed in Theory U before, you'll actually understand a lot more before you even start. And then we'll be using resources from the Centre for Social Impact, as I mentioned before. We'll be using, and you can't really see that because my face is on the top of it, but we'll be using this social change leadership model, and I'll upload this video, this PowerPoint as well for you. And that's a really powerful model of leading for social change, which I think you'll all really resonate with. All of these you'll resonate with. They all inform each other. There's bits that, they all align to each other. And then there's the social change model of leadership or leadership development, which is really based on the group, the community, and the individual. It's a change model. They're all based on flow and feedback loops, etc. And I'll go into them in a little bit more detail. So the leadership theoretical frameworks and practices are based on collective and collaborative, relational and co-creative, and dialogic and distributed inverted power. That's the type of leadership we're looking at. We're looking at that collective and relational leadership where power is inverted and distributed. So it's everywhere. So leadership is dispersed. It's not at the centre. It's everywhere. And so this is through reframing discourse. So reframing the way we hold discussions, the way we talk about things, the way we frame things even. Bridging our differences through a number of different practices, and they'll become much more clear, and unleashing human potential. Presencing, which is about opening your mind, your heart, and your open will. So presencing is about being present and sensing and being aware as you're there while you're there in that space. But underpinning all of this is the moving from the me to the we, or from an ecosystem awareness to an ecosystem awareness, or from an ecosystem of leadership to an ecosystem of leadership. And I've got another little diagram here. So rather than the leader being on the top and in control with all the, everything's underneath, and plants and animals and amoeba and all the rest of it kind of down below, they're the lowly worms. It's an ecosystem approach where we're all equal. And so it's also about nature, it's about ethics, it's about spirit. So it's very, 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 it's a systems approach. So that's what we're looking at, systems approach. Okay. So how we'll be organised is we'll have 12 weeks with the Christmas break where you can all have a bit of a breather, but I do encourage you to keep kind of doing some reading. Don't disengage over that time because sometimes it's hard to get back into the swing of things. We've got the learning site, which is Interact 2, which is based on Blackboard. Everything should be available there. We have online meetings through Adobe Connect, and there are full instructions on how to use Adobe Connect if you haven't used Adobe Connect before. My advice to you is have a little play around, try and get into the room and adjust things at least 15 minutes before the meeting. The first meeting's next Tuesday, the 14th of November. I've actually had to change one meeting in the schedule, which I've actually put into the schedule, and instead of on the 12th of the 12th, it's on the 11th of the 12th. I've got to go to a special ritual handover, which is part of my social change work. I chair an ecological learning centre, and I've got to go to a ritual handover in Sydney on that day now. It's just propped up. And it's also very much based on reflective practice. So there's a lot of reflective activities that you'll be working on, discussion forums, sharing with your colleagues on the discussion forums, and action learning. And action learning is the basis of your project work. And I've got a little bit of a diagram there. The last module is all about action learning, and that'll all be built out by the end of next week, okay? So you'll be able to hop in there. It's good to do the modules in sequence. There's 3 modules, and there's topics in each module, and I've identified some weeks, like I think topic 4 will take 2 weeks. Some weeks will take longer than others. Some of you might want to just read the whole text, might want to read all the navigator. Dive in wherever you like, but it is good to kind of follow that sequence that I've got there. But I would like to see, there's only 8 topics, I'd like to see you really ready and done the 8 topics by the beginning of January, okay? And even before then, maybe. A lot of the resources and the readings too will really help you with your what you're going to do for your second assessment. So there's a think space, and all MBL students are supposed to set up a think space, and I would like others who aren't doing the Master of Business Leadership to consider setting up that as well. It's really good practice. Anyway, we can talk about that. Key milestones for assessment. So your scoping project is due on the 29th of November. I'll explain more to you on our first session exactly what I want for this and what we're looking at, because I know it can be a bit daunting. Okay, so this is where you're actually going to identify what you're going to work on for the rest of the session. Okay, so you're going to look at a particular leadership approach that will unlock some social change. Then the next part is researching the literature and identifying a research proposal. So it's the knowledge mapping. What knowledge do I have about this particular area? So you might decide to initiate some sort of small prototype of a social change, and then you'll do some research into that. And then you'll actually implement that in your workplace or your community. Some people want to work in the community on those things, and that will be your action research project, which is then due at the beginning of February. Yeah, so that's kind of it in a nutshell. If you have any questions that you think will benefit other people, use the discussion forum. Either there's an assessments discussion forum, or there's a discussion forum, a main discussion forum, to ask questions of me that you think will benefit others, and then I can answer them collectively for you. Okay. So that's probably all I need to go over at the moment, because I don't want to overwhelm you too much, but I am looking forward to spending the next 12 weeks with you, and I hope some of you can get to the online meeting next week. These are some of the references I've used today, and as I said, I'll send you all the link to this PowerPoint. And they're my contact details. Probably best to email me. However, you can phone me as well. I'm going to try not to work 5 days a week over the summer, because I am kind of only sessional, but having said that, I'll probably end up being here nearly every day. But call me, and if I don't answer, I'll respond to you within a day or two. Same with the emails. Emails are probably better because I'll respond to you really quickly. Okay, so yeah, looking forward to spending time with you and facilitating your journey. I'm going to try and use a facilitative approach that models the theories that we're espousing. So that's very collective and relational, and more facilitation of your learning than actually me imparting knowledge to you. That's your job. Okay? All right. So see you next Monday or at one of the online meetings. Cheers.